25 years. 9,125 days of marriage. And on the night they were supposed to be celebrating their silver anniversary, Michael Sanders looked across the candlelit table at his wife and said the words that would change everything. "Sarah," he whispered, his voice cracking, "I need to tell you something I should have said on our wedding day. I married you because my mother paid me to." The wine glass slipped from Sarah's hand. But she didn't cry. She didn't scream. Instead, she did something that made Michael's blood run cold. She smiled. A slow, knowing smile that suggested she'd been waiting 25 years to hear those exact words. What kind of marriage survives on a foundation of lies? What kind of woman smiles when her world is supposed to be falling apart? And what secret was Sarah Sanders hiding that made her husband's confession feel less like a betrayal and more like a key finally turning in a lock she'd been standing in front of for a quarter of a century? This is a story about a marriage that began with deception, survived on silence, and ended with a truth that no one, not even the people living it, fully understood. It's a story that asks a question we're all afraid to answer. How well do we really know the people we sleep next to every night? Before we dive deeper, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you. And if you're new here, click on the subscribe button so you never miss any of our upcoming videos. To understand what happened on that anniversary night, we need to go back to where it all started, to a small town in Ohio in 1998. Sarah Mitchell was 23 years old, working 2 jobs to support herself and her younger brother after their parents died in a car accident 3 years earlier. She was a waitress at a diner during the day and cleaned offices at night. Her brother, Tommy, was 17 and hoping to get a scholarship to college. Everything Sarah did, every extra shift she took, every dollar she saved, was for him. Michael Sanders was different. 26 years old, handsome in that effortless way some men are, son of Patricia Sanders, who owned half the commercial real estate in their county. Michael had never worked a real job in his life. Everyone in town knew he was being groomed to take over the family business someday, though no one could quite figure out why Patricia was taking so long to hand things over. When Michael walked into the diner where Sarah worked one Tuesday afternoon in March, she barely noticed him. But he kept coming back. And slowly, almost against her will, Sarah started to soften. He wasn't as shallow as she'd assumed. He asked about Tommy, remembered details she'd mentioned in passing, brought her brother college brochures. He made her laugh, something she hadn't done in months. 3 months after they met, Michael asked her to dinner. Sarah said yes. By the end of the night, Sarah realized something terrifying. She was falling for him. 5 to 7:30, warning signs and the wedding. They dated for 8 months. To anyone watching, they seemed mismatched, but there was something genuine between them, or so Sarah thought. But there were moments, small moments Sarah would remember years later, when something felt off. Like the time she met Patricia Sanders for the first time at a charity event. Patricia had looked at Sarah with an expression that wasn't quite approval and wasn't quite disapproval. It was assessment, like Sarah was a house Patricia was considering buying. "So you're the girl my son's been spending time with," Patricia had said, her voice cool and measured. "Interesting," she'd added, and walked away. The proposal came on a Friday night in November, 11 months after they'd met. Sarah said yes, but even as she said it, she felt a small, nagging doubt. It was moving so fast. Too fast. But she pushed the doubt away. The wedding was planned for March. Patricia insisted on paying for everything. But Patricia's generosity came with strings. She chose the venue, the caterer, the flowers, the music. Sarah felt less like a bride and more like a prop in someone else's production. 2 weeks before the wedding, something strange happened. Sarah was at Patricia's house, trying on her dress, when she overheard a conversation she wasn't supposed to hear. Patricia was in her study, talking on the phone. "It's handled," Patricia was saying. "The marriage will solve the trust issue." Yes, he agreed to the terms. No, she doesn't know. She doesn't need to know. Sarah had frozen in the hallway, her heart hammering. She'd wanted to push the door open, to demand to know what Patricia was talking about, but fear had kept her rooted in place. So she'd backed away quietly, gone home, and never mentioned it to Michael. She told herself she'd misunderstood. She told herself everything would be fine once they were married. The first year of marriage was good. Michael got a position at his mother's company. Sarah quit her jobs and enrolled in community college, finally pursuing the nursing degree she'd always wanted. Tommy got into a good state school, and Sarah and Michael covered the rest. For the first time in her adult life, Sarah felt stable. Safe. Happy. But by the second year, small cracks started to show. Michael worked late more often. He was distracted, checking his phone, his mind somewhere else. His mother called constantly, summoning him to meetings Sarah wasn't invited to. By the 5th year, they'd settled into a routine. Not a bad routine, but not the passionate love Sarah had imagined. They were comfortable. Polite. They had dinner together most nights. But somewhere along the way, the spark had dimmed. By the 15th year, they were more like roommates than spouses. They slept in the same bed but barely touched. They shared a house but lived separate lives. They didn't fight. Fighting would have required passion they no longer had. Instead, they existed in a state of polite distance. 20 years into the marriage, Sarah sometimes wondered if all marriages ended up like this. She watched elderly couples at the hospital holding hands after 60 years together and wondered what their secret was. The 25th anniversary dinner was Patricia's idea. She'd insisted on it, made the reservation at the same restaurant where Michael and Sarah had their first date. Michael was nervous all evening, his leg bouncing under the table, his eyes darting around. "Michael, what's wrong?" Sarah had asked. He'd downed half his wine glass. "I need to tell you something." Sarah's stomach clenched. This was it. He was leaving her. "My mother," Michael started, then stopped, then started again. "Before we got married, my mother made me an offer. A deal. If I married you and stayed married for at least 25 years, she'd transfer full control of the family business to me and set up a trust fund. If I didn't, everything would go to charity when she died." The restaurant noise faded. Sarah stared at Michael, waiting for him to say it was a joke. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I was 26 and stupid and terrified. She said you needed help, that Tommy needed help. She said eventually I'd fall in love with you for real and then it wouldn't matter. I thought I could make it true." The wine glass slipped from Sarah's hand, red wine spreading across the tablecloth. 25 years, she heard herself say. "We hit 25 years today." Michael nodded, tears streaming down his face. "I wanted to tell you so many times. But I was a coward." Sarah should have been angry, should have been screaming. But instead, she started to smile. And then she started to laugh. Not hysterical laughter, but genuine amusement. "Do you want to know something funny?" Sarah said. "I knew. Not everything, not the details, but I knew something was wrong from the beginning. I heard your mother on the phone before our wedding. And I married you anyway." Michael's face went pale. "What?" "I heard her," Sarah continued calmly. 2 weeks before the wedding. She was talking about trust issues and terms and how I didn't need to know. I could have called off the wedding. But I didn't, because I was just as much a coward as you were. I was 23, terrified, broke, and desperate to save my brother. So I took it, knowing something was wrong." She paused. "Here's what you don't know. 3 months after we got married, your mother called me to her house. She told me everything. The deal, the trust fund, all of it. And then she offered me $100,000 to leave quietly. Michael looked sick. She wanted me to know because she was giving me a choice. No questions asked, just money and freedom. Sarah reached across and took Michael's shaking hand. I said no. I told her I loved you and I was staying. I told her that transactions can grow into something real if both people choose to let them. I told her I was choosing you, every day, regardless of how we started. Michael was sobbing now. Why didn't you tell me? Because you weren't ready to hear it, Sarah said gently. You had to decide you were brave enough to tell me first. Michael, I forgave you 24 years and 9 months ago. I've been waiting 25 years for you to forgive yourself. So what do we take away from this story? Maybe it's that love isn't about the perfect beginning. It's about two people choosing each other, day after day, through all the mess and complication that being human entails. Sarah and Michael lost 25 years to lies, but they got the rest of their lives back through truth. What would you have done if you were Sarah? Would you have walked away or stayed and tried to build something real? Leave your thoughts in the comments and tell me where you're watching from. If this story touched you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe for more stories about the complicated truth of human relationships. Thank you for watching.